The news cycle is buzzing with the latest headlines, echoing a manufactured frenzy surrounding climate initiatives and fiscal policies. While the world's attention is captivated by grand promises of a Green Deal that supposedly heralds an era of sustainability, the stark reality is beginning to unravel like a poorly stitched garment. The underlying chaos is not merely anecdotal. It pains me to say that the risk of systemic failure looms large, driven by the very institutions that advocate for these ambitious plans. Governments tout their commitment to climate action, while simultaneously nurturing a dangerously flawed financial system teetering on the precipice of failure. Society is ensnared in a fundamental lie: the belief that transitioning to a green economy can occur without repercussions. It's a narrative spun by politicians and corporate leaders who claim that investments in renewable energy and sustainable technologies will usher in prosperity for all. However, while they talk of noble ideals, the reality of implementation tells a different story. For every flashy solar panel and wind turbine, a mountain of debt is being accumulated. Politicians promise a sustainable future, but the underlying financial mechanics paint a dismal picture, one obscured from public view. In stark contradiction to the official narrative, the Federal Reserve insists we are on a path to recovery, that inflation is under control, and growth is just around the corner. Yet the grim reality is that prices are spiking, wages are stagnating, and consumer confidence is waning. Economic indicators hint at an impending crisis, but the Fed continues to employ its favorite tool, ignoring the symptoms in favor of a narrative of hope. Meanwhile, inflation is not just a passing phase, it has become the new norm, fueled by government policies that prioritize short-term fixes over sustainable growth. As the foundation of our economy erodes beneath us, it is essential to consider the voice of one man who understands the true nature of these tumultuous times: Warren Buffett. The Oracle of Omaha has long been an astute observer of market dynamics, often signaling danger when the herd is blindly optimistic. Presently, he is not merely sounding an alarm. He is acting decisively. Buffett is not filling his portfolio with overvalued stocks or chasing the latest fads in technology. Instead, he is accumulating cash, a signal that speaks volumes amidst the noise of false optimism. His actions serve as a silent signal to astute investors and everyday citizens alike. While the media spins tales of prosperity linked to green initiatives, Buffett is preparing for the inevitable storm. He is divesting from sectors riddled with over-leverage and underperformance, suggesting a recognition of the precarious balance within our financial ecosystem. Cash, once viewed as a stagnant asset, is becoming a prized possession in an era where risk is proliferating and uncertainty is the new normal. The implications of Buffett's strategy cannot be overstated. As governments and institutions proclaim the dawn of a new economic order centered around the Green Deal, he quietly prepares for a potential reckoning. In this environment, cash is king. It allows investors to sit on the sidelines, to weather the turbulence while maintaining the power to act when opportunities arise. When the inevitable collapse unfolds, those who wield cash will be in a position to thrive, while those who have blindly followed the government's narrative will be left reeling. The calm before the storm might lead many to believe that everything is business as usual. But those who understand the intricacies of this financial maze can discern the danger lurking beneath the surface. Warren Buffett's actions are a clarion call. The Green Deal may have been packaged as a panacea for climate change and economic renewal, but the hidden risks signal a far more chaotic reality. In the face of this turmoil, one principle remains steadfast: those who prepare will endure, while those who rely on hollow promises will falter. Imagine you are stepping into your favorite neighborhood restaurant. It has always been a place of comfort, where each meal serves not just food, but a sense of security. The menu boasts various enticing dishes, from hearty entrees to decadent desserts. The here and now of this restaurant seems perfect on the surface. However, upon closer inspection, you begin to notice that something is deeply amiss. The first glaring issue reveals itself when you ask your waiter about the ingredients. They fumble and explain that the kitchen is running low on key supplies. The chef, under pressure from investors eager for immediate results, has opted to cut costs, sourcing sub-quality ingredients, or worse, replacing fresh produce with pre-packaged substitutes. The restaurant can still serve food, but the meals have become unappetizing shadows of their former selves. When the diners arrive, they are blissfully unaware that the restaurant's quality is deteriorating. This scenario mirrors our current economic climate and the ambitious promises embedded in the Green Deal. The governments of the world are akin to the restaurant owners who project confidence and good intentions, selling a vision of a sustainable, flourishing economy powered by green energy and renewed fiscal responsibility. Yet beneath the glossy veneer lies a reality that is hard to swallow. The Green Deal, like the menu at the restaurant, offers stimulating ideas, solar energy, wind power, electric vehicles. But those bright concepts rely fundamentally on a sturdy infrastructure and sound financial underpinnings. The chefs, i.e. policymakers, have chosen to whip up a feast without ensuring they are stocked with the necessary high-quality ingredients. Instead, they use the same flawed financial practices that have led us to this precarious moment. Now, let's break down the mechanism of this unsustainable approach. When a restaurant cuts corners on quality, it can initially appear to be beneficial. Cheaper meals can draw larger crowds who are desirous of a good deal. Investment in the restaurant may surge, as eager patrons rave about the new dishes, unaware of the substandard ingredients. This is the same logic driving governments today, painting shiny pictures for citizens while neglecting the foundational problems of a compromised financial system. Inflation, like those invisible subpar ingredients, quietly seeps into our economy, undermining it from within. It's not merely a number on a chart. It represents the degenerating value of our currency, the rising cost of living, and the creeping inability to afford basic necessities. Just like the disappointed diners who take one bite and realize the spaghetti carbonara tastes more like cardboard than creamy comfort, citizens are awakening to the grim truth that they cannot chase the American dream as it is being set before them. This old system is inefficient and faltering, much like a restaurant that has lost its culinary identity. Instead of prioritizing long-term sustenance and viability, it makes desperate measures that may achieve transient results, but ultimately lead to systemic failure. As diners finish their meals at this restaurant, they may leave feeling satisfied in the short term, only to wake up the next morning with a stomachache and serious buyer's remorse. In the economy, the facade of recovery is just as misleading. The Federal Reserve claims that inflation is under control and that everything is functioning well within our financial system. Meanwhile, households are hit with disasters of credit declines, soaring grocery prices, and stagnant wages. The realities of the dining experience we endure every day do not reflect that rosy picture. Thus, we find ourselves on borrowed time, much like a restaurant that is one bad review away from closing its doors permanently. The strategy of living on credit and false promises unsustainably props up our economy, creating a false sense of security that is now cracking under the strain. The restaurant model, teetering on the edge of collapse, serves as a vocal reminder. As diners avoid establishments that compromise quality, wise investors, those who heed the silent signals of figures like Warren Buffett, will steer clear of a faltering economic framework filled with hollow promises. In a world that is intoxicated by ambition but lacking genuine substance, only those prepared with vigilance and discernment will enjoy the banquet of opportunity when the inevitable restructuring of our financial system unfolds. Imagine, it is Tuesday morning. You wake up to your usual routine, brewing coffee and preparing for the day ahead. You grab your phone and check your bank app, a habit formed out of necessity in these uncertain times. But today is different. You are met with an unsettling message. Transaction declined. Confusion washes over you as you retrace your spending. You have kept your expenses in check, adhered to the budget, and yet here stands the digital curtain, revealing an unsettling reality. Your funds are not there. As you wrestle with disbelief, you step outside your front door and face a world bustling with promise. The sun is shining. You see neighbors jogging, the barista handing out lattes, and children playing in the yard. But the underlying tension hangs palpably in the air, masked by the facade of what society deems normalcy. You head to your car, but as you attempt to start it, all you hear is a feeble click. The familiar noise that should herald the day's mobility transforms into a grim reminder that scarcity is lurking just beneath the surface of daily life. You roll down the street only to find a long line at the nearest gas station. The thick, dark clouds of uncertainty drift overhead as you watch the price surge in real time. The pump that once offered relief is now a harbinger of financial dread. You spot your neighbor whose once sturdy job in retail has vanished. now standing at the sinkhole of uncertainty. Having been laid off just days prior, the inevitable realization dawns. Your carefully constructed financial life hangs by a thread, dictated not by your choices, but by the systemic failures that have become the new normal. Scrolling through your social media feed later, you see posts that celebrate the promises of the Green Deal, vestiges of hope that now feel hollow. Friends tout environmental consciousness, sharing articles about electric vehicles and renewable energy. But beneath the surface, a grave irony permeates. Every like and share glosses over a deeper truth. The very infrastructure underlying those green dreams is fraying. The reality you confront does not show progress. It reveals a crumbling foundation built upon unsound fiscal policies and rising debt. As lunchtime approaches, you decide to treat yourself to a meal. You arrive at a local restaurant, the very same one you frequented for comfort in the past. The sheepish waiter brings your order, but the food lacks the flavor, the vibrancy you've come to expect. You realize that the pounds of debt have forced the owner to compromise quality. The special sauce that was once a secret, a delightful burst of flavor, is now a watered-down substitute that leaves you unsatisfied and yearning for something more substantial. You stumble upon news of another local business closing its doors, one whose owner believed fervently in the transformation promised by the Green Deal. More jobs on the horizon, they said. A new age of renewable success. Yet, you know the truth. Reality is not aligned with the words spoken by politicians or influencers. It is portrayed through the lived experience of uncertainty and fear. You glance down at your phone again, hoping for a glimpse of solace, only to find the dreaded alert stating that your account is frozen. The playfulness of the day turns into an intricate web of anxiety. It's not just your ability to buy lunch or fill your tank. It's a reflection of a system that seems to have betrayed you. Your hands tremble under the weight of the truth. The promises of a sustainable future have failed to translate into tangible security in your life. While the world around you continues to chatter about prospects and innovation, you feel isolated, realizing that accountability has become a mere whisper in a cacophony of empty ambitions. This is not merely a fleeting disappointment. It is a stark warning of the growing disconnect between the narrative and the lived experience of countless individuals. So ask yourself, how long can you tread the line between hope and despair before it snaps? The Green Deal may promise a prosperous future, yet your present is marked by vulnerability. If you are enjoying topics like this and want to stay informed about the real risks, consider following our channel. Because to survive and thrive in this uncertain environment, awareness must be the first step toward preparation. History has an uncanny ability to echo patterns, to replay themes that were once thought to be relegated to the past. When looking at the present circumstances surrounding the Green Deal, a recurring truth is revealed. We have danced with this destructive cycle before. Drawing upon the annals of history, we can observe a series of events that ring alarmingly familiar, echoing the crises we face today. The relentless march of time may have masked the lessons learned, but as we sift through the pages of financial history, the parallels emerge with startling clarity. Consider the stock market crash of 1929, a watershed moment that ultimately paved the way for the Great Depression. Fueled by speculation, rampant leverage, and a misguided belief in market invincibility, the optimism of the Roaring Twenties collapsed into despair overnight. Investors, intoxicated by the promise of endless growth, failed to recognize the unsustainable nature of their exuberance. When the market finally faltered, entire livelihoods vanished in an instant, a stark reminder that over-reliance on fabricated narratives can yield catastrophic results. So it is today, as the rhetoric surrounding green initiatives grows increasingly optimistic, while the underlying realities remain skewed. Fast forward to 1937, when a fragile recovery from the depths of the Depression met another downturn, a consequence of premature fiscal tightening. The governmental attempts to pivot from interventionism to a balanced budget failed spectacularly, sending shockwaves through an economy still tethered to fragility. The lesson is clear. Over-regulation and misplaced confidence in systemic mechanisms can cripple progress. In the modern context of the Green Deal, one cannot help but ponder whether similar miscalculations are being repeated. A reckoning looms as governments prioritize ideological goals over sound economic policies. Are we not flirting with disaster once again? The year 1970 ushered in a profound era of economic disruption as stagflation took hold. the twin specters of stagnant growth and soaring inflation. The ingrained belief that economic progress was a linear path faltered. As public sentiment wavered and the realities of tightening oil supplies became evident, leaders floundered in their policies, struggling to reconcile conflicting economic pressures. Sound familiar? The current administration touts comprehensive climate initiatives while grappling with inflationary pressures, all while the underlying infrastructure remains fragile. The promise of a greener economy rings hollow in this historical context, suggesting we may well be reinvigorating a bygone folly. Then there was Cyprus in 2013, a crisis that illuminated the consequences of excessive debt and poor governance. When the Cyprus banking system was beleaguered by toxic assets and ill-conceived Eurozone policies, the nation faced the unthinkable, the imposition of levies on deposits. In a shocking twist, citizens learned that the very institutions designed to safeguard their wealth had instead conspired against them. This breach of public trust led to societal unrest and strife. Therein lies the critical warning, reminiscent of current banking practices and government assurances bearing a facade of security. The narrative spun by the authorities bears scrutiny. Those who fail to learn from history are bound to repeat it, and as we survey the current landscape, it is seemingly idealistic to presume that this time will indeed be different. The lessons of the past remind us that cycles of optimism, followed by despair, often loop back through our collective experience. Today, we witness a similar buildup of debt levels, unfounded promises, and a public increasingly disillusioned with their leaders, raising the very real specter of systemic failure. Warren Buffett, watching the currents of history, is mindful that the real mechanics of financial systems triumph over the fleeting optimism espoused by policymakers. His actions serve as a counterpoint to the ongoing governmental narratives. While they preach about a greener tomorrow, he recognizes that in the world of finance, preparation is paramount. The parallels are unmistakable. History possesses the endurance of a tenured professor, offering us warnings in the form of its chapters, should we choose to heed them. As we stand on the precipice of another potential fallout, it is crucial to remember that echoes from the past resonate louder in times of chaos. The sentiment of hope, when ensconced in flimsy promises, can only mask the deep-rooted vulnerabilities that render our economic system perilously susceptible. This moment serves as a reminder. We've been here before. And as history endlessly repeats itself, we must take heed, prepare diligently, and remember that those who once again gamble on the promises of a Green Deal may be met with a harsh reality that has haunted our financial institutions time and time again. As we peel back the layers of this complex narrative surrounding the Green Deal, we stumble upon a hidden mechanism that lies just below the surface, one that the mainstream media has largely overlooked. It is not merely the inflation that plagues our economy. It is, more insidiously, a deficiency in our physical infrastructure, coupled with legislative maneuvers that create a precarious balance. While the facade of progress, laden with green promises, invites public trust, the undercurrents of inefficiency and neglect render our economic aspirations increasingly hollow. Take a moment to consider the chasm separating policy from reality, where ambitious targets set by governments are undermined by the very infrastructure meant to support them. The Green Deal advocates for a sweeping transition to renewable energy sources, espousing a future powered by wind and sun. However, what they fail to address is the glaring inadequacy of our current infrastructure to sustain such a transition. The crumbling grid systems, outdated transit networks, and neglected energy pipelines are left unchanged, while policymakers champion this shift. It invites a question: how can we realistically expect a green renaissance in an enfeebled landscape? Remarkably, this neglect of the physical backbone of our economy reveals the farce of the Green Deal. Just as no meal can be prepared without the necessary ingredients, no sustainability initiative can thrive without robust infrastructure. Yet here we are, cheerleaders for a movement devoid of the fundamental components that ensure its success. The ambitious rhetoric garners applause, but it rings hollow amidst the sobering reality of what is essentially an absence of readiness. The government's response to these inadequacies, instead of addressing root problems, has been a suite of misguided solutions that may exacerbate rather than alleviate the situation. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, touted as the new financial panacea, illustrate this folly. In theory, CBDCs promise efficiency and control, enabling governments to surveil and funnel currency in ways never before possible. Yet in practice, they also threaten to create a fool's gold for a dilapidated system. Instead of bolstering our economic resilience, CBDCs can entrench control, consolidating power in institutions that have already exhibited a penchant for mismanagement. The promise of digital currency seemingly presents a leap forward, but in reality, it is merely a distraction, an alluring mirage that operates on the presumption that technology alone can resolve the underlying failures of governance and infrastructure. Moreover, the conversation around capital controls, the regulatory measures designed to restrict the flow of capital, further highlights the underlying weaknesses of our financial system. Proponents of capital controls argue that they can stem financial crises by regulating the flow of money to foster stability. However, such measures often lead to unintended consequences, crippling individual agency and the freedoms they purport to protect. Instead of addressing the root causes of our economic malaise, over-leverage, reckless fiscal policy, and a failure to invest in necessary upgrades, these controls impose artificial restrictions that can suppress entrepreneurial spirit and innovation. Consider this. The government preaches about job creation tied to the Green Deal, yet policy tools like capital controls may inadvertently throttle the very avenues through which employment would thrive. It is counterproductive, and it stands as yet another example of how short-sighted solutions fuel the long-term dilemma, strangling the economy in a chokehold of regulatory burdens while giving the illusion of progress. Now, we must confront the integers in this equation, a government caught in a web of fiscal irresponsibility, shrouded in proclamations of green ambition, yet ignorant of the reality that promises unfulfilled only cascade toward greater instability. They spin tales of progress while plowing ahead with policies that serve to placate instead of resolve deep-seated issues. Instead of addressing the stark inadequacies, they engage in the age-old practice of remedying symptoms, not causes. Ultimately, as they attempt to bolster the failing structure through hastily constructed digital solutions or regulatory edicts, the true heavy lifting remains neglected. Should the fabric of our economy continue to unravel beneath the weight of unfulfilled ambitions and misguided solutions, we will find ourselves ensnared in the very cycles of economic peril that history has warned us about. The hidden crisis encompasses not merely a matter of inflation or a fleeting economic downturn, but a far more profound failure, a systemic neglect propagating in the shadows. The path forward requires us to embrace a stark reality. Our infrastructure is weak, our legislative measures are inadequate, and without addressing these foundational flaws, we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. The real challenge lies not in mere monetary innovations, but in the urgent task of rebuilding the very structure that supports our ambitions for a sustainable future. As we delve deeper into the currents shaping our economic landscape, we must turn our attention to one of the most astute minds of our time, Warren Buffett. Known as the Oracle of Omaha, Buffett has left an indelible mark on the investment world, often acting as a beacon for those attempting to navigate the swirling chaos in financial markets. In times like these, his actions speak volumes, and we would do well to glean the wisdom inherent in his strategy. Let us first examine what Buffett has been selling, for therein lies a significant insight into his perception of current market fragility. In recent months, Buffett has strategically divested from sectors that are acutely vulnerable to the ramifications of the unfolding financial turmoil. Notably, his withdrawals from traditional banks and over-leveraged consumer goods companies are particularly telling. The banking sector, in particular, is teetering on the brink. With rising interest rates and increased regulatory scrutiny, many institutions find themselves exposed to a precarious balance of risk and profitability. This fragile dynamic is not lost on Buffett, who has historically understood that banks operate on thin margins and can easily succumb to the weight of systemic shocks. Therefore, his decision to cut ties with these institutions is not merely a reaction to transient market pressures, but an acknowledgement of the long-term vulnerabilities that lie beneath the surface. Similarly, his retreat from consumer goods indicates a wariness towards sectors that are grappling with diminishing consumer spending power. Inflation has gnawed at the disposable incomes of many households, leading to a paradigm shift in purchasing behavior. As prices climb higher and budgets tighten, companies that once flourished in times of economic stability are now finding their sales faltering weighed down by rising costs and dwindling demand. Acknowledging this backdrop, Buffett's rationale in moving away from these companies compels an understanding. He is not merely selling off his holdings to realize short-term gains. Rather, he is safeguarding his capital for a future in which the economic landscape may reshape itself in dramatic and unforeseen ways. Now let us contrast those sell-offs with what Buffett is acquiring. It is in the sectors of real assets, energy, railroads, and short-term treasury bills, where Buffett has found his footing recently. In times of economic uncertainty, tangible assets stand as bulwarks against inflation and other financial pressures. Investing in energy, an industry increasingly vital in the context of global transitions, aligns Buffett with both the current exigencies of the market and the growing requirements for sustainable power generation. Railroads are similarly robust investments in this environment. They are indispensable for the transportation and logistical needs of an economy in flux. Furthermore, the allure of short-term treasury bills cannot be overstated. In a landscape where volatility reigns supreme, the security and liquidity offered by treasury securities provide a haven for prudent investors. Buffett grasps the importance of maintaining cash and cash equivalents. They serve not only as buffers against potential downturns, but as opportunities to capitalize on market corrections when dislocations arise. Unlike speculative assets that promise growth born of hope and hype, these real assets and safe-harbored securities offer resilient foundations for survival. Ultimately, Buffett's portfolio decisions embody a guiding principle, a philosophy rooted firmly in survival over speculation. In an ecosystem riddled with uncertainty and fragility, the allure of quick returns can seduce even the most seasoned investors into the abyss of risky ventures. But Buffett understands that true wealth is cultivated not merely through speculation, but through careful, calculated investments grounded in substance and reality. As the celebratory winds of the Green Deal begin to subside and the facade crumbles, the lesson stands clear. The savvy investor must navigate the storm with prudence, aligning their portfolios with tangible value that can withstand the inevitable vicissitudes of economic cycles. In times of volatility, the discerning eye understands that it is the real assets, those intrinsic to the operations of a stable economy, that will provide refuge. And as Buffett prepares to weather the storm, he serves as a mentor to prudent investors, reminding us that the key to prosperous investing lies not in chasing the ephemeral, but in solidifying our position in the far more enduring foundations of wealth. In navigating the tumultuous waters that the Green Deal and the broader economic landscape have created, it becomes apparent that survival necessitates immediate and deliberate actions. The narrative spun by governments and institutions may be compelling, but it is essential to distill the noise into practical steps that shield your financial well-being. The warnings from history are clear. The time to act is now. First, prioritize self-custody of your assets. In an environment fraught with instability, relying solely on traditional banking systems exposes you to unwarranted risk. Open a secure wallet for cryptocurrencies and consider allocating a portion of your wealth into tangible assets such as gold or silver. These commodities have served as hedges against economic uncertainty for centuries. By taking your wealth out of the banking system and into your own custodianship, you not only protect yourself from sudden transactional failures or government seizures, but also gain autonomy over your financial fate. Next, establish liquidity. Cash is not merely a tool for transactions. In times of upheaval, it is arguably your most valuable asset. Given the uncertainties that loom over the financial sector, maintaining a significant cash reserve allows you to prepare for buy opportunities that will inevitably arise during moments of market distress. Aim to allocate at least 6 months' worth of living expenses into easily accessible cash or short-term treasury bills. While it may seem counterproductive in a culture that glorifies aggressive investing, having liquid assets during economic contractions can empower you to act decisively when opportunities present themselves. Additionally, evaluate your current investments critically. This is where the principle of auditable insight becomes invaluable. Conduct a thorough audit of your portfolio and discern what holds tangible value versus what is merely speculative fluff. Sell off overvalued tech stocks or consumer goods that show signs of widespread vulnerability. Experience has shown that companies heavily leveraged in an unstable economy can falter drastically. Relinquishing these assets now can safeguard your capital from an impending collapse. Assess sectors such as energy and transportation, which will likely be better positioned amid the current shift towards fundamental economic resilience. Moreover, structure your investments around real assets. This is not the time to chase the tantalizing promises of the next big trend. Instead, seek investments tied to productive outcomes. Focus on sectors such as real estate, agriculture, and essential industries, the foundations of our economy that thrive on necessity rather than fleeting consumer whims. If you are in a position to purchase property, consider real estate that supports essential needs, be it residential units or agricultural land. As we move further into potential economic restructuring, these assets will serve as dual shields against inflation and provide a source of ongoing utility, further cementing your financial footing. In addition to these tactical measures, do not overlook the importance of reducing debt. In an environment where economic conditions can shift rapidly, high levels of debt pose an existential threat to your financial stability. Identify and eliminate high-interest debt as a priority. Once freed from these burdens, redirect those contributions towards savings or investments that enhance your liquid holdings. This process of debt reduction not only improves your creditworthiness, but also fosters financial resilience, activities that ultimately insulate you from broader economic fluctuations. Finally, commit to an ongoing education about the landscape that unfolds. Stay informed through credible financial news outlets, education platforms, and, most importantly, historical analyses that contextualize the present moment. Knowledge is the ultimate tool against complacency. Understanding the underlying mechanisms of the shifts you experience will better equip you for future challenges. As we find ourselves amid the crumbling structures of what was once presented as a beacon of economic hope, the imperative for self-determination has never been clearer. By taking these concrete steps to fortify oneself through self-custody, liquidity, investments in real assets, aggressive debt reduction, and continuous education, you position yourself not merely as a passive observer in the unfolding drama, but as a proactive architect of your financial narrative. In this tumultuous age, those who prepare will endure while the unprepared find themselves caught in the collapsing tide of failure. Act decisively, for time waits for no one. And when the storm finally arrives, only those prepared will emerge from the wreckage to seize the opportunities that lie ahead. As we conclude this exploration into the alarming realities concealed within the facade of the Green Deal, one truth emerges with unwavering certainty. The system will ultimately correct itself. The pressures building beneath the surface, debt, inflation, and crumbling infrastructure, are not mere whispers of concern. They are the resounding echoes of history, foretelling an inevitable reckoning. The question is not if this correction will occur, but when and for whom the consequences will be the most severe. The reassurances of governments and institutions, masked in the language of sustainability and progress, cannot erase the underlying fragility of our economic framework. We are witnessing a collapse of faith in systems that have promised security but delivered instability. The reliance on them has become a mirage from which many will awaken shocked and disillusioned. Countless lives are shaped by narratives concocted in the corridors of power. Yet as we have navigated this discourse, it has become apparent. These promises are built on shifting sands. In the face of such turmoil, we must recognize that no one is coming to save you. The notion that our leaders will swoop in with solutions as the storm brews is a fallacy, a comforting lie that thwarts personal responsibility. The harsh reality is that too many individuals have placed their faith in a system that is increasingly unable, perhaps unwilling, to safeguard their prosperity. The rhetoric surrounding the Green Deal serves to placate concerns, but beneath the platitudes lies a grim truth. Self-reliance is now paramount, and the responsibility rests squarely on your shoulders. Those who have equipped themselves with knowledge and discernment will find a way to navigate the storm, while those who remain passive observers will be left adrift in an ocean of chaos. Prepare now. Take ownership of your financial future. This requires clear actions: securing your assets, maintaining liquidity, investing consciously in real value, and reducing burdensome debt. The groundwork laid today will determine who emerges unscathed when the tumult unfolds. Each decision you make today echoes into the future, shaping a narrative that will either ensconce you in resilience or bind you to insecurity. You must acknowledge the times we live in. It is no longer acceptable to rely on the promises of those who have led us to the brink of disaster. They may talk earnestly of green futures and technological solutions, But our lived experiences reveal a stark disparity. The reality outside our doors speaks to something deeper, an urgency to rethink our approach and the systems we engage with. As Warren Buffett expertly avoids speculative traps, so too must you seek to disentangle yourself from the false constructs that promise prosperity, but deliver only risk and disillusionment. In the end, the truth is not wrapped in optimism, but in acknowledging the fragility of our circumstances. The world may indeed transform, but it will be a tumultuous journey. The road ahead will require vigilance, preparedness, and an unyielding commitment to self-responsibility. As the winds of change gather strength, stay resolute in your awareness of the challenges to come. Embrace this time as a clarion call to action. It is a moment to fortify your position rather than cower behind whimsical visions of progress. The lessons of history remind us, we must steel ourselves against the roar of uncertainty, for in that multitude of chaos lies the opportunity to thrive, if only we choose to act on it. As we reflect on the truths revealed during this dialogue, understand that the choice lies with you. Your path forward can be one of empowerment and resilience, or it can lead to surrender and regret. When the storm finally breaks, ensure that you are standing firm, ready to meet the challenges that confront you with all the preparations you have made. No one is coming to save you. Equip yourself, endure the coming tumult, and emerge ready to seize what's next. The future is unwritten, but it is yours to shape. With that, we leave you to contemplate the road ahead. Fade to black.